Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on. And as it is the 23rd of July, we are going to be watching Patton from 1970, directed by Franklin J. Schaefer and George C. Scott. Probably one of my favorite George C. Scott movies. I mean, there's quite a few on that. The Exorcist 3. I mean, like, if you know, the performance I saw of him. Now, I don't know what the circumstances were around my first viewing of this, but the intensity that George C. Scott brings to the role. And that being said, like I'd already mentioned, not only does this movie star George C. Scott, but it also stars Carl Malden, Stephen Young, Michael Strong, Michael Bates, and Siegfried Rauch. To hero George S. Patton, General George S. Patton, played by George C. Scott. The entry into North African campaign and ending with his removal from command after his outspoken criticism of the U.S. post-war military strategy. So like I'd already said at the beginning, acting performances of George C. Scott. Not that George C. Scott does a bad acting job at all. No, he is like one of the top actors of all time. Drive and his passion to delivery of this role makes this most of the time, very unlikable person be engaging to watch just because of his performance. I mean, the way that he sticks to his quote-unquote guns to do things the way that he has always done them, to be the army, like his battlefields and whatnot. He is so driven to be victorious, he will go to almost any means necessary to do that, even at times when it comes to like shaming his men underneath him. The supporting role, and which George C. Scott's acting obviously rises everyone up to match him tone for this movie. And again, we're dealing with a military story in the 40s, being looked back at from the perspective of the 70s. Well, I guess the late 60s, in 1970. But it's just a great performance. It's a huge looking movie. There's giant scenery shots that use a lot of, I mean, when we get into the combat that we see in it, it's really impressively realistic. A lot of great explosions, perfect pyrotechnics, and some cool stunts and whatnot. But again, when it comes down to it, it is the acting that really drives this story. And again, having George C. Scott in the lead is definitely a strong contender. And it is definitely does not feel like you're watching the movie for the length that the movie actually is. That's just how engaging this story and the way it is brought forward. And that happens on July 23rd, 1943. Which is about an hour, 2 hour, and 52-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Actor for George C. Scott, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Film Editing, Best Original Screenplay, Best Sound, and Best Art Direction, and also getting nominations for Best Cinematography, Best Visual Effects, and Best Original Score. And as it is the 24th of July, we are going to be watching Bonnie and Clyde from 1967, directed by Arthur Penn and starring Warren Beatty. So to begin with, this is one of those classic movies that everyone should see at some point in their life. I saw this movie, probably a television edit version of it, more than likely, probably on a late night broadcast of, movies after 10 o'clock and all that sort of thing. Few viewings I have seen of this movie since the first time. Also, discovering who is in this movie from later viewings, realizing, oh wait, I didn't realize that such and such was in this, or like I forgot that such and such was in this. But yeah, favorite movies that I've been watching for quite a while. And like, not only did I just mention that the movie stars Warren Beatty, but it also stars Faye Dunaway, Michael J. Poehler, Gene Hackman, Estelle Parsons, Denver Pyle, Dub Taylor, and Gene Wilder tries to steal a car and winds up with his owner's daughter, a dissatisfied small-town girl, Bonnie Parker, played by Faye Dunaway. Their crimes quickly spiral from petty theft to bank robbery, but tensions between the couple and the other members of the gang, helpless driver CW, played by Michael J. Pollard, Clyde's saucy older brother Buck, played by Gene Hackman, and Buck's wife, Blanche, played by Estelle Parsons, could destroy them all. Now, this movie has a lot of bang for the buck. So much is thrown into this movie that once you come out of all the storylines and all the characters, that the Bonnie and Clyde central story, it just makes the movie feel a lot bigger than it actually is. When you finish watching this movie, you're like, whoa, this was less than 2 hours and I just saw so much. We have so much involved. And again, we're dealing with a very dramatic telling of the story, but it is so entertaining, especially when you have someone like a Gene Hackman doing a fantastic job. And I mean, one of my favorite actors of all time is Gene Wilder, and seeing him in this one role is just of Eugene is just such a delight to watch every single time. He has the only thing he isn't able to do is do his little like wig out sort of shouting angry sort of rant, but he goes through all of his other tricks and whatnot. The vibrato like force forward guy, and then all of a sudden realizing that he's in over his head, the suddenly turning into the sheepish guy with who tucks his tail and runs sort of thing. But again, we have a fantastic job. Michael J. Pollard, fabulous as the technically third member of the team, playing CW, this sort of kind of smart but kind of slow kind of gentleman. And again, Faye Dunaway, to begin with, her introduction, she is stunningly gorgeous in this movie. She is, like, without a doubt, like, would catch anyone's eye and whatnot. Warren Beatty pours on all the charm into this role, and the interaction just between the two of them when they're, like, by themselves and whatnot. It's exciting. There is some great humor. There's some pretty cool action. There's nothing over the top. It does end with a little bit of gun violence, if you know the story. It's just a great testament to fantastic storytelling, because like I said, it packs so much into surprisingly a short amount of time. Well, they're robbing banks and getting involved with shootouts. Unfortunately, the Buck and Blanche are captured, and that all happens on July 24th, 1933, which is about an hour and 24 minutes into this 1 hour and 51 minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Supporting Actress for Estelle Parsons and Best Cinematography. It also ended up getting nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Written Story and Screenplay, Best Actor for Warren Beatty, Best Actress for Faye Dunaway, Best Supporting Actor Michael J. Pollard, Best Supporting Actor Gene Hackman, and Best Costume Design. And as it is the 25th of July, we are going to be watching Mata Hari from 1931, directed by George Fitzmaurice and starring Greta Garbo. At a very young age, Greta Garbo being one of my mother's favorite actresses, where I was exposed to a lot of classic films throughout my early movie watching experiences. I can't remember any of the extras that went into it, a movie for it and whatnot, mostly historians and whatnot, but yeah, I had seen this movie. But since then, this has probably been the first viewing of this movie that I've seen in a long time. We're talking 30 plus years at this point. And like I'd already mentioned, not only does this movie star Greta Garbo, but it also stars Raymond Navarro, Lionel Barrymore, Lewis Stone, C. Henry Gordon, Karen Morley, Alec B. Francis, and Blanche Frederick. In Paris during World War II, Dutch exotic dancer Mata Hari, played by Greta Garbo, secretly moonlights as a German spy. using her feminine wiles to seduce French and Russian agents into bed so she can uncover top secret information. Mata Hari is the primary target of the French spy bureau's Dubois, played by C. Henry Gordon, falls in love with one of the intended targets, the dashing Lieutenant Rozanoff, played by Raymond Navarro. Dubois uses his former accomplice, Lionel Barrymore, to bring her down. Actually, it would be his former accomplice, played by Lionel Barrymore, to bring her down. So while this is a biography of Mata Hari herself, this is a great noir sort of storytelling from the 1930s. It's got all the classic features of what you would expect from this sort of thing. We got intrigue, we got the war going on, we have a love story, we have deceit, and it's just such a great sort of capsulized version of what made the movies of this time so endearing. The short running time is actually, I had remembered this movie being a little longer, probably because my first viewing was as much would have understood what was really going on in this story, but it is fantastic. I mean, Greta Garbo is just like so eye-drying for every single moment she's on the screen, which is attractiveness and her wonderful acting. Great chemistry between her and Raymond Navarro, and just the way how Mata Hari changes her persona depending on who she's dealing with. Like when she's dealing with a big crowd of men and whatnot, she's acting this way. When she's dealing with her jilted, quote-unquote, official or whatever, and then her intended target, future lover sort of thing. It's just so well done. A classic in its own life to begin with, because it's on July 25th, sentenced to death after a very brief trial and after having avoided the authorities for a long enough time. And that actually happens at an hour and 18 minutes into this 1 hour and 29 minute movie. And as it is the 26th of July, we are going to be watching Evita from 1996, directed by Alan Parker and starring Madonna. So at the time when this movie was coming out, it was kind of hard to avoid not knowing anything about the making of or creation of this movie. Andrew Lloyd Webber, it's remarkable unto itself, and secondary lead to this movie, so not to know anything about this particular movie. However, that being said, this is actually the first time I've actually watched this movie. I've seen scenes, I've seen a couple of the musical numbers, kind of hard not to. Slightly operatic yet slightly rock sort of sound to it, but yeah. And like I already mentioned, not only does this movie star Madonna, but it also stars Antonio Banderas, Jonathan Pryce, and Jimmy Nail. Eva Duarte Perón rises from poverty to become an Argentinian actress, and President Juan Perón, played by Jonathan Pryce. Eva transforms from the impoverished teenager to a woman of influence and power. After the death of her father, Eva travels to Buenos Aires and begins a string of relationships with powerful men before she meets Juan. Power and influence earns her both admiration and hatred. So it's a very interesting story. On the basis of the story alone, through circumstances of her own doing, to become sort of almost a political leader upon herself, adoring public and whatnot. Both Antonio Banderas and Jonathan Pryce, as well as the rest of a fantastic crowd backing her up. This is a very wonderful movie to watch. Now, it is a extreme musical, long-running songs throughout the whole entire thing. You can imagine watching the performance in a theater stretched over like a 2.5, almost 3 hour probably performance. Settings for the era, the costumes look gorgeous, the set decorations and whatnot are great. Really cool kind of explosions, that stuff
version of this, so it's on a bit of a higher level sort of thing. The music is fantastic. It's definitely, like I mentioned at the beginning, the soundtrack is memorable from the era when it came out. Phrases being spoken throughout it are something that is, if you were a fan of the music at the time, is something that stuck with you. Which is nothing against the movie, it just definitely dates the look of the movie. And again, because of this being a translation of a actual theatrically performed musical, there is probably no more than about 50 actually spoken words. Everything else is just sung. So it's musical that you would see in the movies. Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical talents. So near the very beginning of the movie, it's announced that Evita, or Eva, has died. That's about 2 minutes into it. She becomes ill and then dies again as part of the story, because we jump back and forth in the timeline, prompting an outpouring of grief. 2 hours and 3 minutes into this 2-hour and 15-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards of that particular season, Best Song, and got nominations for Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound. And as it is the 27th of July, we are going to be watching High Noon from 1952, directed by Fred Zimmerman and starring Gary Cooper. Now, I will admit that I am aware of the title of this movie, and that's about it. I mean, I do know what the story is about. This is one that always came up in certain conversations and all that, but I just never got around to seeing it personally myself. Meaning, this would be my first watch of this particular movie. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Gary Cooper, but it also stars Grace Kelly, Lloyd Bridges, Katie Ureto, Ian McDonald, Sheb Woolley, and Lee Van Cleef. Former Marshal Will Kane, played by Gary Cooper, is preparing to leave the small town of Hadleyville with his new bride, Amy, played by Grace Kelly. When he learns that a local criminal, Frank Miller, played by Ian McDonald, has been set free and is coming to seek revenge on the marshal who turned him in. When deputies to fight Miller, Kane is discouraged to find that the time comes for a showdown, and he must face Miller and his cronies alone. So this movie is the perfect example of a ticking clock story. The movie starts off at a set time and setting up to this. Now, obviously, we are dealing with a train carrying a former fugitive on a revenge trip to this town. The train is supposed to show up at noon, so we watch as the situation plays out as this supposed to be retired sheriff is constantly watching the clock, trying to figure out how to save his young bride. Just this situation of different people within the town. It's just a wonderful little vignette of what is almost like a stage play sort of production. It's really cool. It's in black and white. We have performances from some wonderful actors. We also have a few that aren't even in, like Lon Chaney Jr. and Harry Morgan have roles in this movie, which again, Lon Chaney Jr., the werewolf, the Wolfman, is just one of my favorite horror films of all time. And then this, I think, might be the 5th or 6th Western alone movie that has Harry Morgan in it, who looks the youngest in this, but like the MASH version of Harry Morgan. I guess it just has always been his voice. Funny little, his wife's name is Mildred, which is kind of weird if you know MASH. But Marshal Kane just tries to desperately find a solution to his upcoming problem. This fugitive is on his way back to the town who arrested him, but the judge of the town that convicted him, and the judge just hightails him out of there with an hour and 20 minutes till the train arrives. And again, throughout the whole entire thing, there is the drama of, you see the clock, it's getting closer to noon, and you can see how desperate people to help him. He even goes to the church is so divided on the, hey, you got into this issue, you get out of it, or the other part is hey, this is the man that helped clean up our town and all that. Is so disturbed by being overlooked for being the replacement sheriff that he actually up and quits and doesn't lend a hand. Just so wonderful, this tableau of these wonderful pulp characters in this Western situation. It's just such a treat to have watched. Plus, it's also quite a short watch. And like I said, we're almost watching it in real time. 10:35 a.m. on Sunday, July 27th, 1873, when the three gunmen ride through waiting for their fourth member to arrive. And because the movie takes place in less than 90 minutes, the whole entire film is the day of the movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Actor for Gary Cooper, Best Film Editing, Best Original Musical Score, and Best Song. It also ended up getting nominated for Best Director, Best Picture, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And as it is the 28th of July, we are going to be watching Without Limits from 1998. Directed by Robert Towne and starring Billy Crudup. Now again, we're dealing with a sports film, a runner and whatnot, a person themselves and the situation around him. I am aware of the 72 Olympics incident and whatnot that went on in Munich and all that sort of thing, but other than that, had really no idea about any aspect of this movie until watching this, which from that sort of description would probably be my very first time watching it. But, however, not only did I just mention that this movie stars Billy Crudup, but it also stars Donald Sutherland, Monica Potter, Jeremy Sisto, Judith Ivey, Dean Norris, Billy Burke, and Frank Shorter. Before Steve Prefontaine, he is an unlikely track star at the University of Oregon. At school, after Steve initially clashes with Coach Bill Bowerman, played by Donald Sutherland, over his style of front running the race at maximum speed from beginning to end, he develops a strong bond with the man. Steve also has a profound effect on a beautiful co-ed named Mary, played by Monica Potter, who becomes the object of his affection. So like I've stated before in this program, the biopic sports films, it's the whole, always the underdog sort of story and all that. Underdog when he starts off his career in running, bringing his style of running with the whole entire situation. Him and his coach have different theories about running. Whereas Steve wants to run flat out all the time. Favors a strategy that will result in a win, more of a progressionally speeding up and whatnot to be able to. And mathematics to figure out that, hey, you can pull a couple more seconds, take seconds off your runtime by doing this at this point and whatnot. But it's an interesting juxtaposition of styles, which is kind of interesting. It's the story. However, again, what happens afterwards as well. It's and again, it's an interesting story. It's told by a great cast of characters and whatnot, but it's not the type of movie that I strive to go seeing. It's always nice seeing Donald Sutherland in a role that I've never seen him before, as a fan of his work and whatnot. But so I saw the movie, and that's about all I really have to say about it. On his basically voyage to get into the Olympics, there is a AAU meeting in Oulu, Finland, and it's on the July 28th, 1971, when the head of the American AAU doesn't allow Steve to run, so Steve attacks him. And that actually happens at about 53 minutes into this 1 hour and 57-minute movie. And as it is the 29th of July, we are going to be watching What's Up, Doc? From 1972, directed by Peter Bogdanovich and starring Barbra Streisand. So this is one of those movies that's because of not only the people involved with it, but timing that the movie was made. To be completely honest, I have careers of both Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal, but this would be my first actual viewing of this movie. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal, but it also stars Madeline Kahn, Kenneth Mars, Austin Pendleton, Sorrel Book, and Randy Quaid. And two researchers played by Ryan O'Neal, and San Francisco to compete for a research grant in music. The man of the two seems a bit distracted, and before he met this strange woman, played by Barbra Streisand, who has devoted her life to confusing and embarrassing him. At the same time, a woman has her jewels stolen and arrives with his stolen top-secret papers. Fantastically slapstick comedy. Not only do we have fantastic wordplay, but we have a lot of physical work going on as well. Very smartly written, very beautifully delivered. We have some hilariously fabulous character actors. Not to like put aside, like Madeline Kahn, fantastic, and this being her actual first theatrical role, is playing the most Madeline Kahn that you can actually even like wish for. And with the Kenneth Mars doing a fabulous character with a voice is just so supremely amazing. And this movie is just like packed with these character actors that are brought forward because of their physical presence, their ability to spin wording properly, or just to be a physically reactive to the thrown at them. This movie essentially is a fabulous shell game. It all takes place centered around a set of hotel rooms in one hallway on one floor, where 4 identical bags belonging to 4 different people gets shifted around, like I said, like a shell game and whatnot. And it's just hilarious to see different people going after different bags for different reasons, and it's just a wonder to watch. The stunts are spectacular in this movie. The amount of car work is fantastic. The stunt work with cars is just like remarkable. The movie itself takes place in San Francisco, so totally take advantage of that as well, especially with the driving sequences. There's some really good, like, actual stunt person. There is a stunt person walking in front of a car that halts before that person gets hit, but with that person still walking forward, the car that stops hits from behind and gets just forward, so just into the empty space just recently vacated by the stunt performer and all that. Just, again, hilarious. Barbra Streisand does a great job at beautifully spouting out these lyrical sort of sounding speeches of information. And the dumbfounded straight man in this movie of Ryan O'Neal just going along with the flow, trying to figure out why his life is crumbling around him and all that sort of thing is just a delight to see. Something that I would be remiss to not point out is during the car chase scene, where the initial vehicle being chased is a bike being chased by 4 cars, the dragon ceremony parade going on with band preceding them are playing a version of La Cucaracha, and it's just a different tone, and it's just that kind of comedy going on. We have a sequence where the giant glass pane is being crossed in the roadway while vehicles zip by and all that sort of thing, and the gentleman going back and forth and all that. But anyways, again, just great slapstick. And to end on a note where we have our leads of Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal having a conversation, where Barbra Streisand brings up the line, being in love means never having to say story, and then having Ryan O'Neal take a beat and then says, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard," as the final line of the movie. When you know about the situation of the timing, you understand why that's just a hilarious note to end the movie on. So when the group of several travelers, all packed with either top secret documents, clothes and lingerie, arrive in Los Angeles on July 29th, 1972. 3 minutes into this 1 hour and 34-minute movie. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off into the future to see what we're going to watch for tomorrow, which is the 30th of July, and that is going to be Cold Mountain from 2003. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 Films to Watch on the Day They Happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.